Bula Banaka, welcome to Clarkie's Corner weekly podcast. The Drua are back in action this week after a bye last week. No damage as far as the competition ladder goes. The Swire shipping Fiji and Drua are still in 7th spot, but they have a tough road trip coming up. They play the Brumbies this week and the Chiefs the following week. And to discuss the Shop and Save Super Rugby Pacific this week, I'm joined by Chris Thomson, ACT Brumbies General Manager, Professional Rugby and Pathways. Bula, Chris, how's things in Canberra? Is the city gearing up for the Drua's visit Friday?
Bula, Clarkie, thanks very much for having me on the podcast. Yes, the Drua arrived on Wednesday, and certainly Canberra's turned on the weather for them. It was 10 degrees and pouring with rain, so we are well aware of the competitive advantage of the Drua playing in Fiji, but there's certainly a competitive advantage for the Brumbies when teams come to Canberra.
I think they've packed their beanies, that's for sure. Now, you are very qualified to talk about the Drua and Fiji rugby in general, and also Tier 2 nations. A quick snapshot. General Manager of the Drua in the NRC 2017 and 2018. World Rugby from 2019, the High Performance Project Manager, Player Development and Pathways. And we'll talk about all of that step by step. But first of all, you've had a big week in your own Brumbies job at the moment, re-signing another 7 players. I believe you've now locked in something like 31 players for next year already. That must be a great feeling.
Yeah, it is. It's good. We're very excited with the group that we've got. We feel that there's a lot of depth within the playing squad. We've got a really strong group of Wallaby players that are committed to Australian rugby and the Brumbies. With Steve and myself arriving back in Canberra late last year, we feel that it's a great level of respect to the program that's been put in place for the past couple of years, which has also developed a great deal of players through the pathway. So while it's great to have 31 players locked in for next year, if you look at this year's squad, 24 players have actually come through our pathway system as well.
So it's all working, which is great news for the Brumbies. And of course, you can see the results on the field at the moment in the top 4 at the halfway stage of the competition. Chris, let's go back a few steps. You know most of the Drua players because you work with many of them in the NRC and with the Flying Fijians. It must be pleasing for you to see so much progress, see many of them go into professional rugby with the Drua. Who are the notable players that stick out?
Well, if you go back to 2017, when I first moved to Fiji as the inaugural general manager of the Drua, when we were playing in the National Rugby Championship in Australia, the likes of Frank Lamania, Ronnie Sau, Penny Matawalu, Apasalomi Vota, and Kitty Talinga, they were all part of Mesu Dolakoto as well. They were all part of those first couple of years, and it's been great to see their growth and their rugby journey. And then you throw in the likes of Masaki Dongi, who I had the pleasure of working with in the November internationals in 2021, when I was kind of flown in due to COVID as the team manager. And then with my other work with World Rugby, where we delivered the Pacific Combines, Soa Nasila, Simi Kuraboli, Mira. There's a plethora of players that I've had certain touch points with over their rugby journey, and it's very pleasing to see that the programs and the activity that's been created for them has allowed them to prosper and achieve what they have.
When I had the opportunity to commentate the home games for the Fiji and Drua last year and this year so far, I jumped at it. I wasn't surprised that these guys were going to, certainly step up to professional rugby, to Super Rugby level and further. I guess you weren't surprised either.
No, not at all. There's so much raw talent over there in Fiji, which is just a fantastic thing to deal and create. The exciting thing is that if you look at a professional training age, the players have. It's quite a low training age, so a lot of it's about learning what it is to be a professional rugby player and what it takes off the field to be able to recover, prepare and manage their body appropriately. And I had the pleasure of being in Suva for that first game against the Highlanders. And it was a fantastic occasion. But I've been going to Super Rugby games for 26 years, and I don't think I've ever been involved in an environment like that at a Super Rugby game.
I have to agree with you there. I thought I'd seen it all as well, but that was a real eye-opener for me. And then you go to Lautoka for the Chiefs game last year. And now, of course, there's already been 2 games, the Crusaders in Lautoka and the Rebels in Suva. And they've got to be the best fans in the world, no doubt about that. Now, your job with World Rugby started in 2019. You saw some Drua players represent the Flying Fijians at the Rugby World Cup in Japan. So that was satisfying for you as well.
Yeah, it certainly was. One of the main priorities and objectives of the Drua in the NRC when it was first created was about providing a daily training environment and level of activity for the on-island Flying Fijians to develop and prepare for Rugby World Cup in 2019, which certainly did provide that. I think there were about 5 or 6 of them that ended up going through to that World Cup at that stage.
You work with many tier 2 nations, the USA. The USA, first of all.
It's actually a really complex environment. It's a large country. It's not cheap. It's quite expensive to run programs, and a lot of it's around creating, not only developing athletes, but to develop the capability and expertise of high performance staff to be able to run and deliver the programs that are required over there.
What about your work in South America? Tell us about that, because that's also developing.
Yeah, certainly, and a lot of that was done from afar and over Zoom because of COVID. But they've done a fantastic job in creating the SLAR, which is now Super Rugby Americas, and that competition itself, its ability to then create semi-professional teams or franchises and centralise their national programs has been a very strong reason why they now have 3 teams that have qualified through to Rugby World Cup 23 in France.
Okay, and speaking of Rugby World Cups, I'm not sure if we'll ever see one in South America in the coming decade or so, but we are going to see one in the United States. Are they ready?
There's still a lot of work to do, and while they haven't made this World Cup, I think it's now gives them the opportunity to have a clean slate. They need alignment through their rugby ecosystem. There are many stakeholders there, but they all need to understand that they need a successful Eagles side for the game to explode, to be seen on televisions. And the biggest thing around a Rugby World Cup is that you need the host nation to be quarterfinal competitive to engage the domestic consumer. And I think Japan showed that in 2019.
Rugby Europe, they also have a semi-professional tournament now, and you had a role in that one as well.
Yeah, we work very closely with Rugby Europe and the creation of the competition they have on continental Europe. Within that, there's a conference system, and we help them create semi-professional franchises as well. A number of them which are run by the unions, which were in our high performance system, run with World Rugby. Notably, you've got Georgia, Romania, Portugal, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and probably the leading side or the leading franchise there is the Black Lion out of Georgia, which will be very similar to the Drua. It provided them with the ability to create a daily training environment and prepare their players for the Rugby World Cup in 2023 in France.
So if you look at those European tier 2 nations, so you mentioned Georgia, you mentioned Portugal, and there's one other as well that's through to the Rugby World Cup in 2023. So that's really pleasing, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. But if you look back to the start, Clarkie, a lot of these competitions and teams were actually built off the success that we had in the Drua in 2017 and 2018. that it was possible and the benefit that it provided the national programs. So the work that was done back then has got a lot to do with what is being delivered now across the globe.
You mentioned before that you were team manager for the Flying Fijians on that November tour, late 2021, tests against Spain, Wales and Georgia. What are you expecting from the Flying Fijians and from the Wallabies in France later this year? And Chris, we're going to see plenty of players from both squads doing battle in Canberra this week when the Brumbies host the Drua.
Yeah, certainly. I really think Eddie and Simon, they'll be looking at as head coaches of the national sides and playing each other in a pool game in France. I think they'll be looking closely at this fixture and how the teams compare. The biggest thing for Fiji coming into France, getting some consistency in their squad, which Simon no doubt is working on, and then the preparation going through to that that tournament is critical, and that's why the Drua is critical in their success as well.
And having a Fiji national coaching the Flying Fijians, that's gone down pretty well, hasn't it?
It has. I've had the pleasure of working with Simon for a number of years with my role in World Rugby, and we've built a really strong friendship. And it's he's had like everybody through COVID, he's had a difficult 4-year cycle, kind of providing activity and getting international fixtures. But I think he's the right man for the role to take the team forward.
Now, Chris, no doubt you are rapt that the Drua and Moana Pacific are both in Super Rugby Pacific. They will hopefully be here for the long term. Are you confident about that?
Yeah, I really do, Clarkie. And I think within 1.5 seasons, both teams have proved that they belong, and they feel that they belong as well. The success of the Drua going back to Fiji and the difficult environment that it provides other Super Rugby sides, the support of the crowds, and then it's such a blessing to see Moana Pacifica in Samoa and playing in Apia against the Queensland Reds this weekend.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one a little later on. Our special guest this week on Clarkie's Corner podcast is Chris Thomson, who is back in Canberra. Left there after school, I believe, and had many years playing rugby and becoming an administrator as well. And his role at the moment, it's a long-winded one. You've had long-winded titles all the way through your career.
Yes.
ACT Brumbies, General Manager, Professional Rugby and Pathways. Okay, the Brumbies, they're second on the second. What are they? Third on the ladder at the moment. 1 point off the pace being set by the Hurricanes and the Chiefs. And Stephen Larkham is back, his second stint, and there's been no noticeable problems for Bernie.
No, Steve's brought his own few little changes to the program. From my perspective, coming back into a team environment after working with World Rugby is something that I've really enjoyed, riding the roller coaster of what happens within a team. We're very lucky. We've had a really good start to the season. 6 wins, 1 loss, but we feel that there's a lot more growth within this squad. We're blessed with the depth that we've got and the professionalism of the playing group. But we still believe that there's a lot more to achieve, and we think we've got the ability to do that.
There is a Fijian flavour at the Brumbies with Rob Valentini playing well. Not long ago, Henry Spate was the Fijian star and the fan favourite. And, of course, there have been others over the decades. But do you see more and more players staying at home and having a crack at the Drua, first of all?
I certainly do. And I think that's a real big draw card, Clarkie, is that what the Drua creates now, instead of a young player growing up thinking that they've got to leave the island to achieve their rugby goals and provide for their family, is that the Drua is now creating heroes on the island, and they're tangible. So you can see them in public, you can see them around town, they're on the television at the right time, and you've now got a group of kids, and I think with the Fijiana Drua as well, you've got a group of boys and girls that can grow up and want to achieve their rugby goals without having to leave Fiji.
Can you go on the record and say that the Brumbies are leaving the Fiji competitions alone now? You're happy to have your own pathways?
Well, Bobby was born and raised in Melbourne, so Bobby's an Aussie. But no, I think it's critical that we allow the players that the Drua want to select, develop, and create, and provide the opportunity to. We've got to provide them with that safeguard that they're able to do that without the ability of losing players. I think that the tough thing now is that the Drua is very present in the public eye, particularly in the north as well. And these players are now on show. So there is the potential risk of losing players to the north, probably more within the Oceania region at the moment.
But I guess that's what it's all about, isn't it? Giving players an opportunity. You're in the opposition camp this week, but what are you expecting from the Drua? They need a big scalp on the road to tick another box. Are they a chance this week against the Brumbies?
Well, I hope not. From my Brumbies hat on. As I said, the Drua belong in the competition. They're physical, they're exciting. I think they're much improved in specific areas of the game in and around their set piece, their ability to stay in the game, their breakdown, their discipline. So we're prepared for a really tough fixture, and we know that we'll have to control the game well to nullify the risks that are presented to us.
And how is the game going in Canberra? Results are pretty good on the field. You're in the top four, which is obviously the main aim, looking to play finals footy again in 2023. I'd like to see a bigger crowd there, but it's a tough market.
We're working on it. A really big part of Steve's vision is re-engaging with the community. And over the last 6 months, we've done a lot of work in that, and you might have seen some footage post game on the field, the engagement with the fans, and we're slowly getting there. Rugby is in a tough space in Australia, in attracting fans, and I think it's around our ability to connect with the hearts and minds of fans, and then ultimately as well, we need to identify individuals, create heroes, provide insight at the moment. If you look at from a performance perspective, we've won an extreme amount of fixtures in the past 30 games at home, but that is not correlating into bums on seats. So there are other ways and other strategies that we need to focus on, and we're well aware of that.
And who's impressed you in the Drua as we look ahead to some big weeks coming up?
Tex at hooker. I think he's got a huge future ahead of him. His leadership as well on the field has grown, but his ability to play at a high level for 80 minutes. Back row centres, obviously large, dynamic, powerful athletes. I think there's been a few changes in there, but they've all shone when they've been given the opportunity. The growth of Asamoah Nasila as well, his ability to play long minutes and a lot of matches will be beneficial for the Drua in the long term, and then also the Flying Fijians.
And Frank Lamani's journey, it just continues, doesn't it? You had him at the Drua, he had the stint at the Rebels, and I just like the way that he's directing the traffic. He wasn't on the paddock for the last home game, but going forward, I look forward to him, and especially with the Flying Fijians later in the year.
Yeah, certainly. Frank's he's a character, and then I think he's grown this year from where he was last year as well. But I think within that scrum half position at the Drua, there is a little bit of depth. Obviously, you've got Penny Matawalu, who started in the last game as well, but injured this year is Simi Kuravoli. And he showed his ability in the test matches against the All Blacks a couple of years ago, and I think he's a superstar that we will see a lot more of.
What about the other games in week 8? Moana are at home in Samoa, hosting the Reds. Now that should be a great occasion on Friday. You mentioned it before, but it's terrific, isn't it?
Certainly, and you see that Moana have had the ability to head over to Samoa early to do a lot of engagements and connect with the community over there. Hopefully, that's a very similar parochial crowd that you see in Fiji. Difficult conditions, and I think and hope that they can get up with a good win there.
I don't know what the Reds did to deserve this, but they've got to play Samoa in Apia, and they've got to play the Drua Suva as well. How long is it going to be, do you think, that the players are going to be able to sort of acclimatise? Is there a perfect fix to playing the Drua or Pacifica in the islands? Do you have to go there, a few more days earlier or whatever?
Certainly be our performance sides teams will certainly be looking at it. I think if you look back to the start of Super Rugby, there was the thought around altitude in South Africa. So it's now the heat in the Pacific Islands. And I don't know if having lived over there, I don't know if you ever get used to it. But yeah, I think it's certainly a competitive the Drua, and that's against the Hurricanes. So we'll certainly be watching closely on that fixture so we can prepare to head over to Wellington and take on the Hurricanes there.
From a Drua perspective, it will be interesting to see how the Chiefs recover from the battle against the Hurricanes, and whether or not they do rest some of their All Blacks as part of this Rugby World Cup rotation that Australia and New Zealand are engaging in. The Waratahs host the Force in the Aussie Derby. Former TARS assistant coach Simon Cron is back as head coach of the Force. No love lost there for Chris for Simon, because he was hoping to become the coach of the Waratahs, but that didn't eventuate. Now all of a sudden he's at the Force. Chris, what's the feeling around the Brumbies, around rugby in Australia? And of course, I'm based in Australia as well. I don't believe that the Waratahs should be in that bottom 3 or 4 in the competition. Are you feeling the same vibes as well, that they're a better team than their results show?
I think so. There was potentially a bit of pressure that they popped on themselves in the first couple of rounds, but I think what they created within the media and the messaging that was put out is what's needed in this sport as well, is that we need to. I think we can be a little bit conservative sometimes in our messaging, and it is sports entertainment, so we need to engage the fans. Obviously, been hurt by injuries at this stage, so we are hoping within the rugby fraternity that we want to see strong Australian sides, not only just the Waratahs, and we really want to be competing. But hopefully, they can get some players back on the field at the back end of the season and improve their performances there.
Eddie Jones, the Wallaby coach, wants Australian teams to beat New Zealand teams. The Brumbies, you sent a team to the Crusaders without, I think it was 5 Wallabies at the time. In hindsight, was that a good week to rest the Wallabies? And are we getting closer?
I'd like to think so. If you look at the resting side of it, yes, we did rest 5 Wallabies. We had another 2 that were injured, so that's 7 in total. There was a 6-day turn. The game was a 6-day turnaround, which included travel. But if you look at the block at the moment, including our trials, we have a bye after our game against the Drua this weekend, but we've been on the go for nearly 12 weeks. So it is very difficult to keep your best 15 players playing through that period, and they need a rest at some stage. And we identified that as the game that where they would have that opportunity. But in saying that, Clarkie, I think a real benefit to our program and our ability to win this season has been the power and quality of our bench and our finishers that have come on the field and been able to almost lift the tempo of the game. And there's been no performance gap between the starters and the finishers, which I think is a real credit to the program.
Yeah, you look at the tight five players coming off the bench to finish, and the likes of Luke Reimer, for example, he continues to improve, and Jack Debrasini with all that experience. So you do have depth, no doubt about that.
Yeah, certainly.
Crusaders, Blues, Highlanders and Rebels have the bye this week, so they'll be getting their rest. Super W, Fijiana Drua suffered their first ever loss last week, going down to the Waratahs women, and I must admit the Waratahs women looked like they had targeted that game. They were looking for revenge after losing the final last year to the Drua. This week the Drua women play the Force on Sunday Arvo. And you'd think the Fijians should be able to bounce back. Are you keeping a close eye on Super W as well?
Yeah, certainly are keeping a very close eye. I had the pleasure of traveling to Fiji for round one for the historic occasion of the Fijiana's first game against our Super W side there. Speaking with a couple of the players and the staff post game, they were very thankful for the experience, and they'd never been exposed to anything like that before. So it's certainly a positive, and the Fijiana belong in that competition too. We are keeping a close eye on the Fijiana Western Force game this weekend. Our Super W side play against the Rebels on Friday night as a curtain raiser to the men's fixture, but that will be critical next weekend. Hopefully we can get through with a victory, but our game against Perth next weekend would be critical to our team proceeding through to the final series in the Super W.
I think in that opening game you mentioned in Nandi between Fijiana Drua and the Brumbies, something like 14 players out of the match day 23 were on debut for the Drua. Okay, some of them were Fijiana 15s players, but so a big turnover, which surprised me somewhat. But I guess that's again an opportunity for players to be seen and to maybe pick up a deal elsewhere.
Yeah, it certainly is, and you'll see with the evolution of women's sport at the moment, the growth of AFLW, NRLW, Super W. You've obviously got netball and basketball, cricket's exploding as well. There's probably a labour shortage, so enough talent that has the ability to play at that level. So it's a bit of a fight for talent at the moment, and certainly the success of the Drua, the Fijiana Drua last year put a lot of those players on show. So, and we're feeling that at the moment within Australia. But credit to our new head coach Scott Faber and our captain Bessie Palu. They've created a really good environment, and I've seen a lot of growth within our Super W program as well this year.
So they're on an upward spiral, are they, the Brumbies women?
Yeah, it is a bit of a difficult program for us. And if I liken it to the HPU satellite setup of the academy in Fiji, we don't have enough talent in Canberra, unfortunately, to be able to service the needs of our Super W side. But it's something that we are seeing putting as a priority. About half of our squad comes from Sydney. We've then got a good contingent from Canberra, and then we've got a few players that come from Wagga, which is about 2 and a bit hours away. So we've set up satellites. So as I explained, very similar to the HPU setup on Viti Levu there. And then they only come together for a very small part of the week. But there were financial reasons, and then certainly player welfare, because players were traveling up to kind of 3 hours there and then 3 hours home just to get to training historically with our Super W program.
The Waratahs play the Reds. That's also on Sunday. No love lost between those two states. And the Taj, you would think, would be too strong for that one. So just in summing up, Chris, everything seems to be on track at Brumbyland. And, you're leading the charge yet again. It would be nice to have some other teams putting some pressure on you. But I think someone said during the week that they're getting a little bit sick and tired of that saying, the Brumbies are leading the charge for Australia again. It would be nice just for someone else to help you out a bit.
As I mentioned before, Clarkie, I think it's important that we look at it as Australian rugby as a collective, and the strength of us. A strong Super Rugby contingent will create a strong Wallaby side as well. It's all around success at the Wallabies, and we're creating an environment that we're at the Brumbies here. We're creating an environment that develops and identifies Wallaby players of the future.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it fair to say that your second team at Super Rugby level is the Fijian Drua, and your second team at international level is the Flying Fijians?
Yeah, both teams hold a close spot to me, having worked with them over a number of years, and certainly always keep a close eye on performances.
Chris Thomson, thank you very much for your time. It's great that you've been able to see a lot of the hard work you and others put into Fijian rugby come to fruition. Enjoy Friday night in Canberra. Hopefully we'll get another chance to talk to you down the track on Clarkie's Corner. But folks, that is a wrap for this week. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again next week. I'm Greg Clark. Bye for now. Mode.
Okay, mode.